You're sitting at your parents' dining table during the holidays, and your mom mentions again that she and dad bought their first house when she was 26. You're 38. You're still renting. You have a good job. You save diligently, and somehow you're still 12 years behind the timeline that feels like the adult success baseline. You smile and nod, but internally you're wondering what fundamental thing you're doing wrong. What character flaw explains why you haven't hit a milestone your parents achieved before their first kid was born? Sound familiar? That quiet shame of being behind when you're actually doing everything right? Here's what nobody told you. Your parents didn't buy at 26 because they were more responsible or worked harder. And they bought at 26 because in 1985, it took 18 months of median income saving to afford a down payment. In 2026, that same down payment takes 8 to 12 years. You're not late. The finish line moved. The average first time homebuyer in the United States is now 38 years old. In San Francisco, Seattle, and Boston, it's over 43. In Austin, it's 41. You're not an outlier. You're the median. And I'm going to show you the actual math behind why this happened. We'll calculate exactly what it takes to buy today versus what it took in 1980, revealing why an entire generation isn't behind schedule, but exactly where brutal arithmetic says they should be. Let's rewind to 1980 and look at what your parents actually faced. Median home price, $64,000. Median household income, $21,000. At 20% down payment, that's $12,800 needed. At a 15% savings rate on median income, that's achievable in 48 months, 4 years. Not easy, but mathematically straightforward. But here's what actually happened. Dual incomes weren't yet the norm, so many families were saving on single earners. People often bought with 10% down instead of 20. Aggressive mortgage lending meant looser qualification standards. Your parents at 26? They were 18 months into careers, riding wage growth that actually kept pace with housing costs and facing a down payment equal to 0.61 times their annual income. 0.61. Remember that number. And they walked into a market where houses cost 3 times annual household income, where a standard 30-year mortgage at 12% interest, yeah, it was high, still resulted in monthly payments around $600. Where rent consumed 25% of median income, leaving substantial room to save. The system was designed, perhaps accidentally, to make home ownership achievable for median earners in their mid-20s. But here's what you actually face in 2026, and the numbers are going to shock you even if you think you know the housing market. Median home price nationally, $420,000. Median household income, $80,000. At 20% down payment on the national median, you need $84,000. At that same 15% savings rate your parents used, 7 years of perfect, uninterrupted saving. 7 years assuming nothing goes wrong, no medical emergencies, no car replacements, no periods of unemployment, no economic disruptions. But nobody saves perfectly. Add in student loan payments averaging $393 monthly. Add in inflation eating your purchasing power every year. Add in rent that now consumes 40% of income instead of 25%. You're trying to save for a down payment while paying nearly double the percentage to landlords that your parents paid. You're looking at 10 to 12 years minimum to hit that $84,000 threshold, and that's the national median. Asha, now let me show you what this looks like in expensive markets where the math becomes genuinely horrifying. San Francisco median home price, $1.3 million. 20% down is $260,000. At median Bay Area household income of $130,000 and a 20% savings rate, which almost nobody achieves while paying $4,500 monthly rent, you're looking at 14 years. 14 years of perfect saving, perfect health, perfect job stability, perfect everything. And that assumes zero setbacks, zero medical emergencies, zero periods of unemployment. Seattle, similar story. 700,000 median, 140,000 down payment needed. Boston, 850,000 median, 170,000 down. Austin, and which everyone keeps calling affordable, 520,000 median, requiring 104,000 down payment on a median household income of 78,000. Here's the shocking reveal. The down payment requirement has gone from 0.61 times annual income in 1980 to 1.05 times annual income nationally in 2026. In expensive markets, it's 2.0 times annual income. You're not saving for 18 months like your parents did. You're saving for 8 to 12 years, and in expensive cities, 12 to 15 years. Let me introduce you to Sarah and James. Household income $210,000, top 20% nationally, and they still didn't buy until 39 and 41. Here's why. Sarah's a senior marketing manager making 92,000. James is a software engineer making 118,000. Combined household income $210,000. That puts them in the top 20% of American households. They just bought their first home in Portland at ages 39 and 41. You'd think with that income they would have bought years earlier, right? Let's look at why it took this long. Combined gross monthly income $17,500. Taxes and insurance, federal, state, Social Security, Medicare, minus $4,900. That's 28%, which is actually low for their bracket. Student loans, both finished grad school with master's degrees required for their fields, minus $1,200 monthly. Previous rent in Portland, minus $3,200. Basic expenses, groceries, utilities, insurance, gas, minus $2,500. Retirement contributions at 10%. Less than the recommended 15, but all they could manage, minus $1,750. Remaining for down payment saving, $4,050 monthly. At $4,000 monthly savings, hitting $150,000 for 20% down on their $750,000 Portland home took 37 months. Just over 3 years. That sounds reasonable until you understand they didn't start saving $4,000 monthly in their 20s. They started at 29 after loans were refinanced and incomes rose to levels that allowed that savings rate. Add 3 years before that to build an emergency fund first. Because you don't start saving for a house without 6 months of expenses banked. Add 2 years recovering from a job loss James experienced at 33, where savings stopped and they actually had to tap the emergency fund. Total time from we should start thinking about buying to actually closing, 11 years. Here's what that actually feels like. Sarah remembers her 32nd birthday, watching her little sister close on a house at 28. Her sister married a surgeon. Sarah remembers sitting in her rental apartment, making $83,000 that year, saving $1,800 monthly, doing everything financial advisors told her to do, and thinking she'd fundamentally failed at being an adult. She was doing everything right. The math just didn't work yet. It couldn't work yet. The down payment she needed was $96,000 at that point in Portland's market. At $1,800 monthly, that was 4.5 years away. And that was before accounting for Portland's prices continuing to rise. It feels like watching everyone around you hit milestones while you're running on a treadmill that keeps speeding up. It feels like your parents asking when you're going to buy, as if you're choosing not to. It feels like shame at 35 for not having what your parents had at 25, even though you're earning more in inflation-adjusted terms. It feels like something is fundamentally broken, and you can't figure out if it's you or the system. It was the system. 4 specific mechanisms explain why the timeline exploded, and the 4th one is going to make you angry. First, wage stagnation. Your median household income grew 141% from 1980 to 2026. Sounds good until you realize median home prices grew 547% in the same period. Housing outpaced wages by 4x. Your parents bought when houses cost 3 times annual income. You're buying when houses cost 5.25 times annual income nationally and 7 to 10 times annual income in expensive markets. The math isn't close. Second, the down payment trap intensified. 20% down went from $12,800 to $84,000 nationally. That's a 7x increase, while incomes only grew 2.4x. Your parents saved $12,800 while earning $21,000 annually. You're saving $84,000 while earning $80,000. They were saving 0.61 times their income. You're saving 1.05 times yours. The burden nearly doubled. Third, the rent trap. When your parents were saving for their first home, rent consumed 25% of median income. Today, it's 42% in most markets. In expensive cities, it's over 50%. You're trying to save while paying double the percentage of your income to landlords, Every dollar going to rent is a dollar not going to your down payment fund, and you're spending a vastly higher proportion on rent than your parents ever did. Fourth, credentialism and degree inflation. Your parents' generation bought homes with high school diplomas and union wages. Factory workers, tradespeople, single income households on modest salaries became homeowners routinely. Today's first-time buyers average 130,000 in household income. That's 60% above the national median. Affordable housing, or what passes for affordable now, is rationed to high earners. The bottom 50% by income are nearly completely locked out of homeownership in most markets. You need a degree to get the income to afford the house that people without degrees used to buy. You're not late because you're irresponsible. You're late because saving what used to take 18 months now takes a decade, and the system doesn't acknowledge that shift. So who's actually buying? And at what ages? Let's break down the age cohorts because this will either validate your experience or show you exactly where you stand. First-time buyers under 30, 9% of the market. 9%. And that 9% overwhelmingly has parental help or inheritance. If you're under 30 and bought without family money, you're a statistical anomaly, or you're in a genuinely affordable market, which are increasingly rare. Ages 30 to 39, 43% of first-time buyers. This is the new normal range. This is where Sarah and James land. This is where you probably land if you're watching this video. If you're 38 and buying your first home, you're not in the finally caught up group. You're in the statistical center of the distribution. Ages 40 to 49, 31%. Nearly a third of first-time buyers are in their 40s. Increasingly common as people finally hit the income thresholds and savings accumulation needed. This isn't failure, this is math. Over 50, 17%. Many buying after divorce, after inheritance, after life resets. Some buying for the first time after renting their entire adult lives and finally deciding, or finally having the means. If you're 38 and buying, you're not behind. You're exactly on schedule for 2026. If you're 42 and just now saving enough, you're in a near majority cohort. The homeownership timeline didn't just shift slightly, it fundamentally restructured. And nobody sent out a memo explaining that the old timeline is dead. And here's the part the real estate industry will never tell you about why they push the buy young narrative so hard. Here's what's insidious. The housing industry, real estate agents, mortgage lenders, even well-meaning parents keep pushing the narrative that you should buy young. Build equity early. Don't throw money away on rent. Start building wealth through home ownership in your 20s. Sounds like good advice. It's not. What they don't mention is that buying before you're financially ready destroys wealth faster than renting ever could. First-time buyers who stretch to buy in their late 20s are defaulting at 3 times the rate of buyers who wait until mid to late 30s with larger down payments and stable incomes. 3 times. The people who bought young aren't building wealth. They're filing bankruptcy at 28 or losing their homes to foreclosure at 32. The industry needs transaction volume. Every closed sale generates 6% in commissions. On a $400,000 home, that's $24,000 to agents. Add thousands in loan origination fees to lenders. Add recurring property tax revenue to municipalities. Your financial stability isn't their concern. Your signature is. So they pathologize waiting. They frame prudent delay as failure, as missing out, as throwing money away. What they call missing out on equity building is actually avoiding premature debt that could ruin you. The median homeowner who bought in their 20s and sold within 7 years lost money after transaction costs. Closing costs, agent commissions, maintenance, repairs, they ate any equity gains. Buying at 38 with 20% down in stable income, that's not late, that's smart. And that's playing the game when you can actually win instead of when the industry profits from your struggle. They profit when you buy stretched. They profit when you buy with 5% down and pay PMI. They profit when you buy before you're ready and end up paying mortgage insurance, higher interest rates, and eventually default fees. Nobody in that chain makes money when you say, no thanks, I'll wait until the math works. So let me give you permission to do something radical. You can reject the timeline entirely. If you're 38 and still renting, you're not behind your parents at 26. You're exactly where the current mathematical reality places you. Your parents bought at 26 because houses cost 3 times income, and down payments took 18 months to save. You're buying at 38 because houses cost 5 times income, and down payments take 10 years to accumulate, the timeline changed. You didn't fail. If you're 43 and finally buying, you haven't failed. You've survived a system designed to make homeownership nearly impossible without top quintile income. You navigated student debt, wage stagnation, rent extraction, and a housing market disconnected from earnings. You made it to the finish line that moved further away every year you ran toward it. And if you're 35 and realize you won't buy until 45 or 50 or maybe never, you haven't lost at adulthood. You've simply recognized that the American home ownership timeline was rewritten without announcement and nobody sent the memo. Renting while building wealth in index funds, that's not a consolation prize. No, that's a legitimate financial strategy that often outperforms housing returns without the leverage risk. Renting to maintain geographic flexibility for career opportunities, that's not settling. That's optimizing for income growth over asset accumulation. Renting because buying would consume 60% of your income and leave you house poor, that's not failure. That's financial wisdom. You can choose not to play a game rigged against you. You can choose to build wealth differently than your parents did. You can choose freedom over the appearance of success. Real wealth isn't the house. Real wealth is having options, having breathing room in your budget, having the ability to take career risks or move for opportunities. Your parents bought at 26 because the math worked. The down payment was achievable in 18 months. The monthly payment was manageable on single median income. The appreciation was reliable. They weren't smarter or more disciplined. They lived in a different mathematical reality. You're buying at 38 or not buying at all because the math changed. Houses that were 3 times income became 5 times income. Down payments that took 18 months became 10-year timelines. Rent that consumed 25% became 40%. The entire equation restructured against you. You're not the failure, the system is. And understanding that removes the shame and reveals the truth. You're exactly where you should be given the constraints you're navigating. You're not behind. You're surviving a fundamentally broken housing market that no longer serves median earners the way it once did. So if you're 38 and renting, stop carrying shame that doesn't belong to you. If you're 40 and finally buying, celebrate reaching a milestone most people can't hit anymore. And if you're choosing not to buy at all, own that choice proudly. You're not missing out. You're opting out of a system designed to extract wealth from you, and that might be the smartest financial decision you make.